there. So we'll see what kind of traction we get here and get feedback from people on what's going to be most helpful going forward. It looks like there are some non-dev community members in here, which is cool.
It is cool, and I think it might be like a call like this might be useful for not just for developers, but anyone who's interested in the direction of the project, right? Because we're talking about tech things, but at the end of the day, they affect everything else, right? New features added to the protocol, like it impacts what kind of applications and user applications can be built on top of it. So
Yeah, this is true. And um, we're going to do a cadence of weekly Twitter spaces as well on protocol and ecosystem and product, AMA style. So more opportunities for people to ask questions and hear updates from different contributor teams. This is cool being in Discord. It's like a different environment.
it is, yeah, and I think the uh, not the rule, but like the what we can do basically is we can if a person has a question, they can ask ask the question in chat, and we can invite people based on the questions, so we can have a proper discussion if the question um, is interesting.
Yeah, that sounds good. Um, yeah, to kick off here, anything you wanted to highlight about what you've been working on? I guess some fun alphas that from a UI design perspective, there's a whole revamp happening on the Zeta docs, which is really cool, and we'll share more threads when that goes to production. Um, but you're constantly optimizing, getting started on ZetaChain and pushing new tutorials, any like high level announcements, and then we could jump into Q&A.
Yeah, I guess I can just share my screen and go over some of the new things and updates to the developer experience and the protocol. And yeah, let's do this. So okay, right. First, the docs. Of course, if you're building on ZetaChain, you're probably using the docs quite a bit, almost on a daily basis, most likely. Um, we've been using a system called Docasaurus, which was fine, but it hasn't been updated in a while. So we've decided to move to a different system and update the docs visually, just making them a bit more pleasant to use. It still uh, uses the same styling, so nothing too drastic. But I think it became much more kind of pleasant to use overall. But yeah, I guess the main thing is the content. So in the past month or so, we've added more tutorials, and one of them is swap to Zeta. So we already have a swap tutorial, which is probably one of the most popular tutorials because this swap functionality is something that everyone uses. Everyone knows how to build a, a simple swap application that uses Uniswap, for example. But here, of course, it's a cross-chain swap, but it's still very short, and it allows swapping between tokens on different blockchains, which is super useful, right? But uh, I've been getting a lot of questions about swapping into Zeta on ZetaChain, right? So you put in BTC and get Zeta on ZetaChain. So I decided to extend this tutorial and make sort of part two of the swap tutorial, which is called Swap to Zeta. which with just a few changes, like 10 lines of code almost, you get this feature, which kind of proves how easy it is to build applications like this, right? Um, so what this contract does is it basically, depending if the target token is Zeta, it either uh, swaps into a zRC20 and calculates the withdrawal fee and then withdraws, or if it's Zeta token, you don't need to withdraw because Zeta is not a zRC20 token, so you just transfer it to the recipient. So I think it's a pretty neat addition, especially since we can reuse the same contract basically, right? Once you finish swap, you go on to swap to Zeta if you're interested. I think in the future, what we can do with this is actually make it more generic to swap to any token on ZetaChain, right? So it doesn't have to be Zeta, it can be any other token that we have a liquidity pool for. So yeah, pretty exciting stuff here. I think we covered everything else uh, on the last call. NFT smart contract. If you haven't heard of this example, it's a neat example. It also has a front end component to it, so you can build an NFT application that allows users to mint NFTs based on the tokens they put in, right? So if you put BTC, if you send BTC to your NFT contract, it will mint a BTC NFT, and you can then send it to other users, which is also a pretty small example, but a neat application. So if you're interested, go check this out. We've also updated the messaging tutorials as well. So, and we had a counter example. We had a tutorial called Warriors, which wasn't clear what it was all about. So we decided instead to focus on the functionality that tutorial covers, right? So you might want to learn how to transfer Zeta tokens using the connector API. So that's one tutorial. It's the simplest of the four. You don't even need to write any code. You just clone the template, run this command, and you get a contract. And it's absolutely tiny. The only thing it does is calls the connector contract with the arguments, and you're sending Zeta. It doesn't send data, so it only sends Zeta tokens because it doesn't have a message handler. So it only has send message function that transfers Zeta to a different blockchain to a specific recipient. So super simple, but in this tutorial we kind of cover all the nuances, all the um, uh, kind of infrastructure that you need, like deploy and interact tasks on this very simple example. The second one is cross-chain message. You actually don't need to write any code for that either. You just run a command in the template and you get a contract. It's still pretty simple. It's a bit longer. It's like 20 lines longer, but what it does is it sends Zeta optionally, but also an arbitrary message. And when on the receiving end, it emits an event with this message. Simple as that. Of course, you can add any custom logic here. It's up to you, right? But it's the simplest example on how to send arbitrary data between blockchains using the connector API. The third one is actually a brand new tutorial and a very popular use case for cross-chain messaging. And this tutorial is about minting an ERC20 that can be transferred between blockchains. So this contract is an ERC20, and when it's created, you mint tokens to yourself, just for demo purposes, basically. And then what you do is when you send the message, it burns the tokens on the source chain and mints tokens, the same amount of tokens on the destination chain. So it's a simple burn and mint mechanism that allows you to mint token on BSC, for example, and allow users to transfer it to Ethereum through ZetaChain. And we've updated the NFT tutorial. It's no longer called Warriors. It's just a cross-chain NFT that allows you to mint an NFT that you can also transfer between blockchains. So yeah, these 4 tutorials have been updated, and I encourage you to check it out if you're interested in building cross-chain messaging applications. But the reason why I think it's important is because of how messaging actually gets integrated um, into the whole developer experience, starting from the next version of the protocol. So in the protocol repo, you might notice that we've released a new version called V16. It's going to be deployed on testnet soon, and it adds a lot of interesting features. But I think the most interesting of them, uh, well, from that developer point of view, but it's just my kind of my take on it. But cross-chain messaging is coming to ZetaChain. So previously, uh, the messaging contracts, right, and just generally cross-chain messaging was only between connected blockchains on mainnet beta, that is Ethereum and BSC. So you could send messages between these 2 blockchains. With the new update to the protocol, you will be able to send messages to and from ZetaChain using the connector API. What this means is that these tutorials will work with ZetaChain, so you'll be able to deploy this ERC20 contract to ZetaChain, to Ethereum, to BSC, mint a token on ZetaChain, and then send it to Ethereum, for example, and the other way around. So it's essentially allows developers to build dApps that can send data to and from ZetaChain and call contracts. This is super powerful, and we're really exploring this area and how this can empower developers to build even more interesting applications. That and the reason why this is super important is because it's a crucial component of the chain abstraction tooling that we provide for developers, right? We want to provide all the mechanisms for developers to be able uh, to deploy contracts from ZetaChain, call them from Bitcoin, call an Ethereum contract from ZetaChain, call a BSC contract from Ethereum, right? Like all the combinations of these interactions should be possible. And yeah, I think we're going to have more tutorials on this simply because it just opens a lot of interesting opportunities, right? For example, um, how these 2 technologies, omnichain and messaging, can be used together. Actually, we're thinking about kind of merging the two from developers' point of view, because simply because this distinction uh, no longer is necessary, because you will be able to build an omnichain contract, right, that can also send messages to connected chains. So it's both an omnichain contract and a messaging contract. So you might as well kind of make a new category for this and just merge the 2 technologies and um, provide just separate kind of docs on ZRC20 functionality, on connector functionality, um, or what system contract is, and so on. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's super cool and gives developers a lot more flexibility to put their app logic wherever they want. this is like the true chain abstraction future. Maybe we'll pause for some questions on, you just shared a lot with the 2.0 stuff. Anybody have questions on the tutorials or ZetaChain 2.0, or if you're working on an app, any questions about development? Always good for other people to hear uh, the challenges and things that you're learning as you build on ZetaChain. So you go ahead and raise your hand. Um, yes, this is developer office hour, but yeah, you guys should ask questions as well. Tech focused, please. Someone is raising their hand. Maybe I'm the noob at Discord. Let me see.
Yeah, it would be better if, before raising your hand, if you could type your question into chat so we can just kind of see the nature of the question, just makes it easier to respond to them. If not, I can continue on and we can pause a bit later.
Yeah, I'm here for any developer stuff, and yeah, feel free if there's more stuff to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we covered messaging, right? So this has already been merged, but in the blog post, we also have uh, some cool, um, I guess, alphas from a technical point of view on how omnichain smart contracts are going to be able to interact with chains in the future. So if we go to the swap tutorial, for example, I mean any other omnichain tutorial, we'll see that there is a withdraw feature being used, right? The withdraw method is the method, one of the methods of the ZRC20 contract, which allows you to basically move a ZRC20 token back to its origin chain. So ZRC20 BTC goes back to Bitcoin to the target recipient. So this is useful, but you can't call a contract with this. So it's a simple transfer from a TSS address to the recipient on the connected chain. Um, but we're looking into extending this, well, actually adding a new method called withdraw and call that will not only allow you to withdraw the token to the connected chain, but also call a contract. So this uh, is just, again, very powerful feature, kind of similar to cross-chain messaging, but it's it's basically merging the two features, right? One is withdrawing ZFC and a feature of messaging, which is calling a contract on a different chain and passing arbitrary data to it. Because you need to be able to pass arbitrary data when you call contracts, right? That's the whole point. So it hasn't been implemented yet, although some work already has been done on this. This is really exciting. It kind of makes omni-chain functionality very close in terms of features to messaging, while still retaining kind of the benefits that omnichain brings, right? Which is you just deploy one contract, but now this contract can call a different contract through the same uh, stack that you've been already using for ZRC20. So interesting development there. Um, I guess other um, other changes that we're looking into is making staking
That
available. Sorry.
Yeah, that next section in the blog post about chain support, Velyar is asking when new networks are scheduled to be added for testing. If you're OG, you might remember Polygon was actually supported on testnet, and so I think a lot of that is built out, and EVM chains bring a level of ease with integrations. Anything to add on new networks under investigation and how that works?
So we don't yet have a roadmap on adding new blockchains. As you mentioned, adding EVM chains should be much easier. The reason why we uh, decided to deprecate Polygon on testnet is, well, because the testnet we supported, Mumbai, was deprecated, and instead of like before switching to a new testnet, we needed to reevaluate how Polygon fits into all of this, and Polygon is undergoing some significant changes of their own, and I think that's the biggest blocker right now because we need to know where they're going, right? Like how to integrate them in the best way possible, and that depends on their roadmap as well. So I think once we have some clarity on Polygon 2.0, if I'm not mistaken, or whatever the chain code name is, I think then we'll make kind of a decision on supporting Polygon. But um, yeah, I think it would be great for us to actually come up with like to propose a roadmap for chain integration. Maybe something we should focus on. So yeah, other features. We kind of shipped a few versions of the toolkit without really publicly announcing anything, just because uh, we kind of iterated on the functionality. But I think now we're closer to having it pretty well defined and stable in Toolkit V8. So the latest updates brought migration to a client-based system where instead of just having separate functions, you have a client that you instantiate, you select it, it's testnet or mainnet, you maybe pass a wallet. Uh, you can also customize, for example, if you want to use a different RPC URL, you can do that. So here we're using all that node with a custom API key. So this just makes this much easier to use from the front end. Um, just to kind of a quick review of what the toolkit is, it's a library that contains useful functionality for interacting with ZetaChain. So you can see here are the docs. We should publish a link to it in the docs properly, but right now it's just docs packages toolkit. And you can see it has functions for getting balances, getting fees, pools, um, and also for interacting with ZetaChain. So there's a deposit function that lets you call contracts on ZetaChain as well as withdraw function. You can use it programmatically, but it's also available um, as part of the template. So if you type hard hat, you get all these features, and most of them correspond to the features in the toolkit. But this just allows you to use the same functionality programmatically. And we're using a lot of these um, functions in the docs as well. So if you go to um, types of tokens, ERC20, um, this is using um, the same functionality behind the tokens command. So it's kind of using the same code all over the place in the front end example, in the template, in the docs. So yeah, it's still kind of work in progress. I think it's already very useful because it has features like tracking cross-chain transactions using events. So if you're building a web application that needs to track ZetaChain cross-chain transactions, you can use this. I mean, it's not documented yet, but we need to work on that, I guess. But still, like even calling smart contracts on ZetaChain using the deposit function is super useful, and you can see it in action in the types of transactions. This is actually also a new section in the docs where we kind of go through all the possible transactions, both successful and unsuccessful. Um, so you can run this from the command line, and uh, there are also links um, to the transactions on connected chain, so you can see how how it kind of all fits together, right? Um, that you can just deposit a token on ZetaChain, or you can um, uh, use the same function basically to call a contract. So yeah, I encourage you to check it out as well to have a bird's eye view on what kind of transactions are possible on ZetaChain. I think that
There's a good
might be
question
okay.
from Twitter. Um, I just posted in the chat. Someone asking, will universal abstraction carry the fundamental features of Ethereum's account abstraction? So I don't know how familiar you are with that EIP, and how that relates to our omnichain account approach. Uh, any insights?
I think these two technologies are well, they're definitely different in implementation. That's for sure. But from functionality point of view, I think they complement each other because um, account abstraction on Ethereum or any other blockchain is meant to simplify interactions with contracts on this blockchain, right? With ZetaChain's universal accounts, we simplify interactions with universal apps on ZetaChain from any blockchain. So you can use your account abstraction mechanisms on Ethereum and then use universal accounts to call a contract uh, on ZetaChain, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like um, if you think of account abstraction as, I don't know, sign with Google, right? It makes it easier to sign in, right? But universal accounts with ZetaChain make it easier to move data and value across blockchains after you signed in. So you can use your regular account to interact with universal apps on ZetaChain, but you can also use your smart wallet on Ethereum to also interact with contracts on ZetaChain, if that makes sense. So these two technologies are 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 complementing each other, and I think in when you combine the two, it becomes even more powerful. I think it's not ZetaChain's mission to simplify interactions on like Ethereum or on BSC, and I think it's great that we're not going there. Right, there are other projects that are focusing on account abstraction. We're focusing more on how the chains are connected and providing a platform for applications that can be used from any chain, whether it's through smart wallets or through regular wallets.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it kind of gets into the modular thesis, like the high level philosophy stuff in the last blog post, like as other chains we connect to make improvements and new functionality, universal apps benefit. Um, at least that's how I understand it, high level. All right. Other technical questions in the chat? Otherwise, Dennis, I think we can wrap up at the half-hour mark here, and we'll keep doing these monthly, 2 times a month, up to the community. And I mentioned before, we're going to roll out more of a cadence of weekly Twitter spaces with contributors from other groups. Want to get some of the protocol contributors on the line on Monday on X to talk about 2.0 and questions you guys have about all of the exciting developments underway.
Cool. Well, if there are no other questions, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you on Discord and X and anywhere else.
Thank you, sir. Keep up the good work, and see you everyone in the future. Thanks.
Thanks, you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.